Integrative Inquiry, Week 11 Practice, Resilience, Reverence, and Vulnerability.
I invite us to get started in our arriving and grounding practice. So taking a moment to notice the feet on the floor, seat in the chair, inviting in the back. It's upright, alert, yet relaxed. Noticing where the hands are placed. And inviting the eyes to soften. Might invite them to close or look down on something that's not moving, so it's as if you're looking but not really seeing. And then giving yourself permission to notice how you're breathing. And see if you can observe the breath without judging the breath. So that playful curiosity of observing the movement of the breath in and out of the body. Getting playfully curious. Noticing what's here to be noticed. With a kindness, a gentleness. You might notice going into the story of why the breath is the way that it is, or you might notice the mind wandering to what happened just before arriving here, or what will happen next. That's just a normal part of the human brain at work. So seeing if you can offer kindness to that mind wandering, past, future, body sensation, sound, as you simply invite attention to rest back on the breath sensation in the body, observing breath. Observing all the body mechanics of the breath with playful curiosity. And then inviting some gentle wishes to arise. You have arrived here, in this space, in this time. You intended to be here. I am grateful you are here. Then whenever you're ready, gently inviting attention to rest on the sound sensation of the bell. Then whenever you're ready, gently inviting your attention back to the screen in front of you, back to your chat window, if you don't have it opened already. And welcome. Thank you again for being here. It's always an honor for me to be here with you in this time and space. I'm so grateful. As we mentioned This week we've been focusing on resilience, but we've been pulling it apart. And we've been honoring a lived experience with reverence. So each one of us has this lived experience that we're bringing to right here, right now. And we may not have had the opportunity, as we mentioned, to really explore what it means to find this space of restful awareness, or this space of feeling like we've reached homeostasis, or a place of safety, a place of rebooting. And so many of the students we serve, the colleagues we serve, may have experienced this. So with bringing the spirit of reverence to just simply honoring what is without agreeing to what created it, and bringing a generous dose of self-compassion to noticing what we're noticing, I invite in the journaling question. So inviting you to pull out your journals. If you haven't already done so, your pen and paper, or you're welcome to use the chat window. And take just a minute or so to write on whatever comes to mind. Let's take 2 minutes. Write whatever comes to mind with regard to this question. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Again, the invitation is to write on whatever comes to mind without self-editing. And if you don't know what to write, you write, I don't know what to write, but just take that, invite that pen to the paper and write whatever comes to mind. What would you do? What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Until you hear the sound of the bell. Please begin. And taking a moment to wrap up what you're writing. All right, thank you. Thank you for engaging in the journaling exercise. And please feel free to open your chat window if you'd like to and share what you wrote. And reminding ourselves that this journaling exercise is actually a practice that can be used to promote resilience. The dialogue that we can have with ourselves through pen and paper, bringing awareness to things that we may not have been aware of prior to that. So thank you for sharing. I'm looking at Aja. Thank you for sharing. You'd be an actress. That's what you would do if you knew you could not fail. And Mike, thank you for being here and sharing. You'd provide community, agency, and school workshops in building beloved community based on mindfulness, compassion, communication, and socio-emotional learning. Thank you for sharing that. And what else did you notice as you wrote, as you journaled on what you would do? What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Did you notice some liberation? Did you notice some fear? What did you notice as you journaled in this practice of journaling and what you would do if you would not fail? What did you notice? I noticed some, I was journaling along with you, and I noticed some liberation, like just some excitement. I noticed like that feeling of effervescence, like my blood is little champagne bubbles and was rising to the surface. And then I noticed I spoke to the fear of what I would do if I knew I would not fail. So I spoke to the fear of failure. I noticed in my journaling, I didn't intend to go there, but negative bias of the brain showed up, and I noticed because I noticed when I was journaling, I was like, well, why don't you just do this? And then came out the why, like the story, right? How many of you noticed that? Anybody? Just me? Okay. Thank you, Mandy, for joining me in that. Yeah, so we might notice whatever we're noticing is whatever we're noticing, and this is the practice. Yeah. So Mike, you noticed initial fear, confusion, mental blocking, and now liberation, total congruence between values, skills, vision, and moving mission forward. Thank you, Mike. And Martha, you noticed fear that even if I couldn't fail, then maybe I still wouldn't live a fully creative life. I also noticed some interest that one of my answers, that I would say no to more things as well as yes to more things. Wow, really insightful, Martha. Thank you. So again, this practice of journaling is neurologically, from a neuroscience perspective, we don't really fully understand how this works, and the research is still in process. It's at a nascent stage, but apparently bringing pen to paper or pencil to paper really invites in this integration of emotion and wisdom, the trusting emergence wisdom, to come onto the paper and bring our attention back to what is, as opposed, it pulls us out of the storytelling part of our brain, if that makes sense. And why is this a resilience practice? Why would this, what do you think? Why would this be a resilience practice, journaling on what we would do if we didn't think we could fail? Why is this a resilience practice? What do you think? Who knows, right? Who knows why it's a resilience practice? Well, it's one of many resilience practices. And the invitation is, again, just as you mentioned, is we start to connect with both the success and potential failure of our living in the life that we aspire to, living in the life that we would love to live, living in the ways that we feel called to live. Yeah, and Mandy, it reminds us that we have the ability beyond what we might believe. Thank you. Yes, we have the ability, we have abilities beyond what we might be telling ourselves the story about. So when we think about resilience training, that's exactly what we'll be doing, is we'll be pulling apart some practices, and we'll be starting with that inner calm practice. And Martha, thank you. Does it build into the body of a physiological model of the sensations of no potential for failure? Yes, thank you. It connects to this emotional piece, right? That's very much a part of our resilience, of returning to inner calm. And it also brings about the thoughts that we're telling ourselves and our opportunity, as you mentioned, as Mandy mentioned, to see, is this really true? Is the story that I've started to believe really true? And who would I be? What would I do if I didn't think it was? Yeah. And Mike, maybe resilience is a core value based on personal integrity, resourcefulness, and creative transformation. Yeah, it could be a core value, yes. In this course, we're talking about it as a process, of actually a practice process that's made up of 3 components. And this is from the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, this teaching. And so again, with resilience, what we begin with is this notion of inner calm. You might also call it a notion of, you know, that feeling, just checking my hands, you know, that feeling where you get like, yeah, I'm home here. I am, yeah, it's like that I'm back. I'm back. Some people talk about it as centeredness. Some people talk about it as groundedness, but it's the awareness of, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm right. I'm safe. I'm content. You could maybe use all sorts of descriptors, but it's this, so resilience is coming back to this sense of knowing and trusting emergence in self. It's this trusting, like, I got it, I got everything I need within here. Yeah. So returning to that state. Because what may take us out of that state are emotions, right? That we're going back to way earlier in the class where we're talking about amygdala hijack, fear, threats. Those pull us out of that state. And also thoughts, storytelling, inner critic. Those will pull us out. And so it's difficult neurologically to know, you know, what comes first, the emotion or the thought. But the idea here is that what we're seeing is that what we want to do in cultivating resilience is train, again, the awareness of this inner calm. So what I'd like to do from you is, well, let's take a moment, let's pause before we use the chat window, and let's invite in the practice first of the inner calm. And so what I'd like to do is just invite in the grounding practice that you may have found useful to you, whatever that means to you. So for some of you, it might be bringing a gentle attention back to the body in the chair, sensing the feet on the floor, the back upright, alert, yet relaxed. Softening the eyes, the face. And for others of you, it might be inviting yourself and giving yourself permission to engage in some movement with the breath. So perhaps raising the arm with an inhale, lowering the arm with the exhale. And taking whatever you need to move into a grounded state, that state sensing the body in this space and time, sense of trusting emergence. So some of you might be picking up the pen and paper and journaling. What's alive for you? What's drawing your attention away from this moment in time? Journaling on what you trust, what you love, what brings you alive, what brings you alive. And then as we notice this inner calming, this inner grounding, this inner trust in emergence, what are you noticing as physiological sensations? What are you noticing? Just taking note with one word, where you're noticing that in the body. Perhaps noticing the qualities, the textures, the characteristics of that. What are you noticing as perhaps labels for feelings or emotions? Just one word. What are you noticing as you sense these sensations, these bodily sensations of inner calm? What labels are, maybe they're not words, maybe they're images, colors. Maybe they're symbols. And then thoughts. What thoughts are you noticing? Are you noticing I am home? I am grounded. I am centered. This is the experience of inner calm. What are you noticing? And then taking one more moment to notice what you're noticing. And then inviting your attention back into this space and time. And just inviting you to utilize the chat window. What did you notice as you invited yourself into this state of inner calm or the state of home? Were you able to go there on demand? And if you weren't, how did you meet that? How did you meet that? What did you discover that you may not have discovered before about this moment in time of inner calm? And maybe it was just a moment and then it flitted out, but what did you notice? Feel free to use the chat window if you'd like to share. And while you're writing in the chat window, just this invitation again to hold with reverence that not all of us have lived experiences that have created the opportunity for us to really explore inner calm, or this sense of groundedness, this sense of centeredness, this sense of I am home right here, regardless of where I am, where this body is in the world, just a sense of I'm home. Yeah. And Martha, thank you for sharing. You noticed a reluctance to let go of. And so my invitation to you would be just to invite in an inquiry of what needs to be let go of. What needs to, is there anything that came to mind when you were inviting in, perhaps, what is this? What is this resistance? What is this? Or just noting, resistance. Resistance. And then if resistance stays, then perhaps bringing a self-compassion practice to that. Moment of suffering. Validating. Yeah. Mike, you notice happily surprised with rapid calming and focus. I have arrived. I'm home in the here and the now. Thank you. And Steve, you noticed, Stephen, thank you. You noticed that your most difficult obstacle to inner calm is letting go of distractions that engage my mind. Once I did, I noticed the pull of gravity on my pulling me down. Yeah, thank you. Just noticing, like, wow, there's thought, and it's pulling me away from right here, right now. It's pulling me away from home. I hear a lot of awareness, yeah. And Aja, it took you a minute to get there, but you got there, yeah. Thank you, Aja. And the invitation here, thank you, Aja, for bringing that up. So the invitation is, in this practice of not arriving, right, is noticing the arrival and noticing the movement away from the arrival and noticing the arrival and noticing the movement away from arrival. Just ebb and flow, just like the breath. Yeah, just like the breath. So the invitation here is for us to begin to cultivate, to practice noticing the inner calm. And just taking note, not as a clinging on, right? Because then that becomes thought, that becomes striving, and then it's gone, yeah? But just noticing, ah, this is what I'm noting in the body. This is what I'm noticing as I seek to just observe. Maybe I notice sensations, maybe I notice colors, maybe I notice sounds, maybe I notice images, maybe I notice whatever, right? Notice thoughts, notice whatever. And then, there it goes. And it's back. But the invitation in resilience is beginning with just becoming aware of what is inner calm, because this is the state in this practice that we seek to, quote unquote, bounce back to, right? To bounce back to. And it might be just half a breath, it might be a quarter of a breath, but beginning to notice, there it is. And then we begin to notice these emotions that precede and follow arriving, right? Begin to become familiar with emotions that precede and follow arriving. And so we practice this a little bit, and some of you are speaking to this. I really appreciate it, just noticing resistance. And noticing the gravity, right? And just feeling the body being pulled down. That's high emotional awareness. Beautiful, beautiful practice, right? It might not feel beautiful, but it's beautiful practice. Just really, really a lot of awareness, or just even noticing the process of, this is pulling me away. Noticing, naming, inviting back, without the struggle, without the strive, just a gentle invitation and the kindness back. So let's practice a little bit more, shall we? And in this time when we practice the arriving practice, and again, you can practice in whatever way is meaningful to you. All I'm doing is offering words that may or may not be meaningful. I invite in the scanning, this head to toe scanning of what you're noticing. With regard to when you notice something pulling you away, is there a quality in the body? Is there a texture? What are you noticing? Sound good? All right, so let's invite again just this arriving with attention resting once again on the body in the chair. Noticing what there is to notice. And as you invite in a state of inner calm, whatever that means to you, in whatever way you'd like to practice noticing. It's not necessarily I gotta get there, right? If you notice that, just inquire into that. Oh, what's this? I gotta get there. Just inviting in a noticing of the body in the chair, the breath sensation in the body. And as you notice, just inviting yourself to the place of body and chair, noticing breath sensation in the body. See if you can get real curious about the process of arriving and departing. Where are you noticing arriving and departing in the body? And maybe you've just simply noticed, not here, not here. And that's a practice of awareness. I'm not here. What are you noticing in the body when not here is present? The particular qualities or textures. You might notice striving, you might notice resistance. What does that feel like in the body? Where are you noticing that? Does it have a particular characteristic, quality, color, shape? And then whenever you're ready, gently inviting in the attention back to the screen. What did you notice in this practice, this very brief practice? What did you notice? How many of you just noted, maybe not noticed the arriving and the departing, but it's gone. I'm back in the past or I'm in the future. How many noticed that? And then maybe could pause and say, and what am I noticing with this? Where is this in the body? Yeah. And how many of you were noticing the arriving? Here. Or the departing? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Isn't that fascinating that the mind does that? I just think that's fascinating. I think it's hilarious too. Yeah, what else did you notice? What did you notice in the body as you noticed arriving, departing? Did you notice? Did you notice different sensations? Even so, Becca, I noticed my brain pulling out to the food in my teeth. Then breathing back to inner calm, then pull back to the teeth. I hear a lot of awareness. Thank you, Becca. Aja, you noticed a calm that came over me and my heart rate slowed. Wow, thank you. Thank you. So, I hear just powerful awareness. Beautiful. Thank you all for sharing. So, and Martha, you noticed arriving was almost immediate when you lay a hand on your upper chest, having some weight there. Let me connect with the rest of my body at home. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful practices. Yes. So the invitation that I'm making here is practicing noticing when inner calm is present and the qualities of inner calm. Get curious about inner calm. Just get curious about inner calm. It's not the destination. It's just a state to become curious about. Yeah. And then emotional awareness, the emotional awareness of inner calm, arriving inner calm, and departing inner calm. Just getting really curious about that. Yes. And then becoming aware, cultivating awareness of the cognitive part of this, the stories that we tell ourselves, the naming that we use, the messaging, yes? And then practicing again, just even when I go into storytelling process, storytelling, stop, breathe, notice what's here, reflecting what's here. Who would I be if I thought it wasn't true? Whatever is here, who would I be? What would I choose if I thought it was true? And then the response. Let's practice again. Practice again arriving. Practice departing. Practice arriving. Practice departing. And the idea of this practice is that we begin to notice that this is simply a process. Resilience is a process. Identifying these states is just a process. It's a process of being in the experience of life. Is that fun? It's all a process. And what we're also noticing then is how we explain the state that we notice we're in. So how many of you in the last week have noticed a state of what I call dysregulation, where we might feel not resilient? We might have been pulled off, we might have been pulled off center, and we might be feeling struggle, and thank you. Good, I'm not alone. Yes, and what did you notice about how you explained arriving to that state? How many of you explained it as, I'm human? Yeah, this is part of the human process. Arriving to state of, thank you. Yeah. And how many of you went into the story of, darn it, I'm a mindful compassion practitioner, I'm not supposed to be here? How many of you went into that story? Yeah, you might notice that too. Yeah, it's just a story, right? It's just a story. And so, a lot of the work in positive psychology is inviting us to notice the story that we tell ourselves about whenever we're noticing what state we're in. So it might be really positive, right? We might notice positive, and then it might become easier to return to a more desirable state, or journey back, or just be with the state we don't want to be in, right? It might be more lighter, if you will. And then if I notice I get into inner critic, or I notice I start getting into the should and shouldn't, that pessimistic explanatory style, I notice this feeling of stuck, right? Stuck, I don't see an option out. Anybody notice that? Yeah, just me? Okay. Yeah. So the invitation here is in the practice of noticing how we notice and noticing these thoughts, see if we can also just to go, I'm like being more accepting of this. And so this cultivating of just, you might use optimism, you might use the word acceptance, depending on your practice and what resonates with you. I actually like to use more of just simple loving kindness, loving kind acceptance of just, here I am. Yeah, here I am. And once I notice, that's the opportunity to practice these resilience steps. What am I noticing with thoughts? What thought is taking center stage? Who would I be? What would I do if I didn't believe this was true? This is the Byron Katie inquiry. Who would I be? What would I do if I thought it was true? And what is the kindest response, the most genuine response, the kindest response to myself and others, the most genuine response that feels more in align with that home base, trusting emergence. Okay, is that useful? Maybe or may not. So these are the 3 steps as defined by Search Inside Yourself Leadership and Institute. And so looking at resilience is more as a process that we move in and out of. And we practice moving in and out of this with awareness so that we can move in and out in more quickly. I'll never forget Ming using the analogy, Chad Ming Ten, who wrote the book Search Inside Yourself, and wrote, thank you Stephen for reminding me of this a few weeks ago, wrote Joy on Demand. And because he is an engineer at Google, he likened this process of, engineers are supposed to really understand a system, and so that they really know what will bring it offline. And that they also really study that system to know what will bring it back online when it's gotten offline. So they don't pretend that it's going to work perfectly. Something is going to take it down. But do they know enough about what can take it down? And do they know enough about what can put it back in online, moving forward, working at a high optimum level. And so I love that analogy because it made me think of this analogy of this is our self-awareness practice with mindful compassion. We're noticing what we're noticing. And so we're noticing, maybe even I can notice even the process of getting pulled offline. Then I can notice the process of coming back online. And so my job is to just become so familiar with these various states and the emotional aspects of them, the bodily sensations of around them, the cognitive process of it, so that when I notice getting pulled offline, rather than like fighting it, I can just go, noticing getting pulled offline. Here's the emotional part of it. Here's the storytelling part of it, right? And here I am. And I can utilize the same practices to bring me back. The same practices to bring me back. Okay? So let's practice, shall we? All right, so we'll do this very briefly given our time. It always goes so fast. So inviting in this grounding, the grounding that in whatever way that works well for you. So perhaps noticing the body in the chair. And then noticing the breath sensation in the body. So again, leveraging Martha's wisdom, bringing a hand to your heart or your belly. And then let's invite in a very mild memory of going offline, of being taken off of that inner calm, taken out of that inner calm. Again, you might notice the brain and its negative bias going to the worst case scenario. See if you can dial that back. Dial that back. Give yourself permission to dial that back. The learning is just as great with a mild experience. And going to this memory of being pulled offline, what did you notice in the body? You might even notice some smells, some sights, some sounds. And where in the body did you notice this? As you recall this memory of being pulled out of your center, off kilter, if you will, where did you notice this in the body? To have a particular quality or texture. What did you notice as thoughts? Thoughts that were occurring, maybe there were several. Is there one that's moving to center stage or front stage? Could have to do with your identity, could have to do with believing a story. Doesn't matter, there's not fixing, we're just noticing. As you notice these emotional resonance in the body from this time that you were pulled off of center, and you notice these thoughts, see if we can invite in a stopping. Just imagine yourself stopping in that moment and bringing a hand to the belly or the chest. Maybe even offering a soothing self-kindness touch. And seeing if you, imagining yourself in this memory, can get in touch with the breath sensation in the body. What are you noticing? Might be a shift in the body sensations. It might be a new discovery of a body sensation or quality or intensity. Might be some thoughts, some stories. But as you imagine yourself stopping, breathing, and noticing, let's invite in some reflection. What thought or sensation is moving to front stage or center stage? What's taking up residence in the focal point of the mind? And let's see if we can inquire into that. Who would you be if you thought this thought that's in center stage or front stage right now wasn't true? Who would you be if you thought this thought wasn't true? What would you choose if you thought this thought wasn't true? Now, taking this same thought that's in center stage or front stage, who would you be, or what would you do if you thought this thought wasn't true? If you thought this thought wasn't true? What would you choose? Now, in the next moment, see if you can play out the choice that's kindest to you and to others. See if you can imagine yourself choosing that and playing it out in your mind's eye. What are you noticing? Now, releasing that image, let's invite in another image. You might need to ground yourself in your chair. You might need to open your eyes. You might need to shake out your hands or your body. And then bring your attention back to body in the chair, the breath in the body. As you invite in an image of success from the past week or two, perhaps it's a moment where you did something better than you anticipated, where someone acknowledged your accomplishment or your contribution in a way that was meaningful to you. See if you can really see yourself in that space and time, hearing the sounds, seeing the sights, smelling the smells. Noticing the sensations in the body. Where are you noticing success sensations in the body? Do they have particular qualities, characteristics, intensities? What are you noticing with regard to bodily sensations in a successful experience? And then what thoughts are you noticing? Amidst all the thoughts of this memory of success, is there one particular thought that's moving to front stage or center stage? And if so, what might that be? As you notice the thought that's moving to front stage or center stage, let's invite in some curiosity, some playful curiosity. Who would you be, or what would you do if you thought this thought was not true? Who would you be? What would you do if you thought this thought was not true? Who would you be? What would you do if you thought this thought was true? And see if you can imagine the choice that's kindest to you and to others. And see yourself playing out that choice with regard to this success in your mind. What are you noticing? And then releasing the image of success, inviting your attention back to the body in the chair. You might shake out that image. Invite in a gentle attention to the body in the chair and the breath sensation in the body. See if you can arrive back home, whatever that means to you. Again, just a process of noticing arrival, departure, with kindness, avoiding attachment to judgment. Then whenever you're ready, bringing a gentle attention to the sound of the bell. Thank you. As I notice the time, I don't have time, unfortunately, for us to unpack this, but I invite you to just take a moment to journal on what you noticed. You're always welcome to email me or share on the listserv, what you're noticing, what you're experiencing, or the discussion board. And then as we move forward, I'm just inviting in and noticing that success and failure can pull us out of this state of home. How many of you know people who have been derailed by success? Yeah. How many of you have experienced being derailed by success? Yeah. So it's not only failure. Thank you. Thank you for responding. It's not only failure that can derail us, it's also success. And so in our practice, what we're noticing is we're just noticing what we're noticing and becoming again so familiar. And knowing also that things can change. Context changes, culture changes, all of this changes, but holding our lived experience with reverence and a great big dose of self-compassion as we continue to practice. In your course site, you also have access to some of Brené Brown's work, and you can probably tell by now I'm a big fan of Brené Brown. But there's a guide, and I know you can't see this, but it's in your site with the Story Rumble process. And this process for Brené Brown's Story Rumble process is actually allowing us to get into organizational resilience. So we can get right into this guided practice, which is meant for you individually as a leader. We can also take this into our organization, maybe not in a meditative way, but you're certainly welcome to do that if you'd like to. These practices are recorded and they're on your resources site for your learning management system, so you're welcome to access them anytime. But we can really get into this exploration and inquiry, and using this process Brené Brown calls rumbling, which is really being with the discomfort of exploring what takes us down individually and as an organization, and the process of our getting back on track. There are lots of questions and inquiry for organizations to use, so really useful tool. Okay. So just a moment to invite in any questions that you might have. Mandy, you're welcome. My pleasure. Such a joy to be with this journey with you. Any questions, thoughts, insights you might have? Yes, thank you all. Martha's thanking you all. And thank you, Martha. Yes. Yeah. And if not, let's just invite in again, just one more, noticing the body in the chair, the breath sensation in the body. And I'm reminded right now of John Kabat-Zinn saying, wherever you go, there you are. So home is the practice of being in relationship with what's being experienced in a kind, gentle, inquiry way, recognizing that it's a process of discovery, constant process of arriving and departing, and just getting curious about that. And Mike, you asked if the last practice, the meditation practice, is on our website. Yes, it is. It's on our resources, and it's, I believe, called the Resilience Practice. If you can't find it, just give me a holler, mbrescia@sdsu.edu, and I'll be happy to give you the direct link. All right. Okay, with that, my friends, we are out of time. So thank you again for being here. It's always such a joy and a pleasure and an honor to be with you on this journey. Take good care. We'll see you next week.